Welcome back to the BTO Sunday recap. No, we are not recapping the Pro Bowl. I don't know when that even starts. We're going to be previewing the Super Bowl, talking a little bit about last week, just everything going on in the NFL as we approach the final of our NFL recap weeks. Then we move into baseball season and maybe a little bit of basketball, dabble in. Who knows? Who knows, Mike? All right, Super Bowl. Let's not waste any time, man. You're the king of the predictions with the Super Bowl, 5-0 in your last five, allegedly. Nobody has proof of that, though, so how can we believe you? But 5-0 in the last five, how do you feel about this one?
Yeah, this is the toughest one in a while, Kevin. I mean, and I do have no proof. I mean, I am 5-0. You can believe me. You cannot believe me. I don't really care. But I'm 5-0 in the last five. I have no clue what to think here. And we're obviously going to get into all the reasons why. I do think it's a fantastic game. Gabe of the Playbook, he says this is the most intriguing matchup in the last 10 years of Super Bowl matchups. I think it's close. I think it's that good of a game. So we're going to get into it, but I'm excited.
All right, let me see here because that's an interesting take. Let's just start right there with it. Last 10 Super Bowl matchups. This one's fascinating because you have the obvious storyline of a guy chasing greatest of all time and a head coach who is really – the coaches in this I don't think get enough attention in the storylines because you have a head coach in Andy Reid who's trying to really solidify himself into that upper echelon of all-time coaches with a third ring. And then you have Shanahan, who we talked about this last week. If he wants that legacy conversation, he has to win this year. He's got to find a way to win this game because he hasn't yet. He's come up short a bunch of different times. And I think that both teams – I know for whatever reason, this is a hated-on Super Bowl matchup. I really like both teams. I enjoy the stars in Kansas City. I love watching Mahomes. I love Kelsey. I love Chris Jones. I love Andy Reid and so many other players on the team. And on the other side, I love Brock Purdy. We both do. I love Kyle Shanahan. I love what John Lynch has done with the team. Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa. Every single aspect of these two teams I really enjoy. So I'm pumped for the Super Bowl, man. But let's look at the last 10. What do you think of that take?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Last year's Super Bowl, I mean, you had the two best teams in the league. Like, I think undoubtedly going into that game, you're like, oh yeah, these are the two best teams. So that's a big one. You have the GOAT versus GOAT in 2021, the 2020 season. Brady and Mahomes, that was like almost a passing of the torch kind of game. So that one is definitely up there. I think he might be right, though, Kevin. I think he's right.
So I'll give you one, and I'm not going to say it's more intriguing because of the result in hindsight was such a mess. But the 2014, which was 2013 season, Seattle-Denver fascinated me. The blowout, 43-8 Seattle-Denver game, because you had Peyton Manning going against this all-time defense, which is how it's going to be remembered because they scored 8 points. And Manning was the record breaker that year, and he had the best quarterback season of all time. This great defense comes in with a third-round pick at quarterback that you don't really know about yet, but they just had an awesome season, Russ and Marshawn. And Seattle came in and blew the doors off. I would say the one that intrigued me the most was probably the New England Philadelphia game, but I don't think it's close to this one, man. This one, there's a lot on this one that is great.
I think the best one. I'm gonna say this, and I think a lot of circumstances kind of brought the hype down a little bit because of COVID. But I do think it's that Buccaneers Chiefs one. That's the biggest in terms of hype and matchup.
No, you're right. You're right.
It's that one. You have not only do you have Brady Mahomes, you have Kelsey Gronk, who, I mean, how many times are we going to argue over the next 10, 20 years who's the best tight end ever? I mean, that's going to be an argument just like quarterbacks are, maybe not as big, but as close. Those two are very close along with Tony Gonzalez. So that is probably historically looking at it. That's probably the best one, but this one can be too. Kevin, you got a guy, Mr. Irrelevant. I mean, you think this underdog story, and I saw this, I forget where I saw this, but this video, like, you would think that people would be rooting and jumping on the bandwagon of Brock Purdy to take out the potential, next greatest of all time, the next, evil empire, if you want to call it, with the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. Guy is hated on and he's the last pick. What a story this is. And like you mentioned before, we both love Purdy.
Yeah, Purdy definitely, for me, just has personified overachieving in the last 2 years. And everyone hates on Mahomes and Kelsey and Taylor Swift now and Brittany Mahomes. So you're right. Why is Purdy not being so pumped up and celebrated here prior to this game? He's a perfect story. This is usually what a movie is made about. He's a perfect story to come in and dethrone Kansas City, get San Fran a ring, and their 30-year drought, whatever it is. I think it is 30 years since they won. I think the last time they won was that San Fran versus the Chargers when Steve Young won big. I think that's their last title. But that's which would be give or take a year on either end, 30 years from now, maybe.
There you go. You nailed it right on the head. 94-95 season against the Chargers.
Yeah, so it was 29 years ago.
30 years ago.
Yeah, so that's the last time. So Purdy's got a chance to end that drought with as Mr. Irrelevant. I don't think that's been a played out narrative either. A lot of people think that. Tom Brady, I heard that Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick for 25 years.
Yeah. Why is it different? Why is it different with this kid? Because he's got the talent around him, because he's got a really good coach. Enough, please. You know what, Kevin? The one reason, and this, I swear to God, this is the only reason why I'm having a difficult time with my prediction for the Super Bowl, because I don't have it a week out. And why I'm leaning towards one way. You watch these last 2 games the 49ers played in, right? Usually they don't come back, right? They're down in these games late. And look at Kyle Shanahan's history. They don't come back in these games. I watch Brock Purdy. He hasn't played great throughout. He played a little bit better in that Detroit game than he did against Green Bay. But early in that Green Bay game, he was not good. And when they needed him the most, he was at his best. Late, go on game-winning drives, win the game, take the lead. And then you look at him in that second half against Detroit. Their backs are against the wall. You want to tell me Detroit hands them the game? Fine, I think they did. But Purdy still needed to make plays. He made them with his feet. He moved in the pocket, made plays. This kid late under pressure is unbelievable for the last pick in the freaking draft.
I will say maybe this is getting crazy because I said last week to pump the brakes on the Brady Mahomes thing, but there's certainly a Montana Mahomes conversation to be had and a couple other guys. But let me say this. If Purdy wins this Super Bowl, it's possible that we are in an era where Brady and Montana are playing at the same time, because Purdy and the Niners could go back here every single year. They do. The Niners go here every year.
Yeah.
Shanahan's in the conference championship game.
It's 4 to 5 years.
And you got a real cool quarterback here under pressure, late in games, and that's how Joe Montana was. Obviously, Montana was great for 4 quarters every week, but that's how Joe Montana was. So in terms of winning, you might have 2 dynasties competing with each other in this era if it can be KC and San Fran. But for San Fran, it has to be a win this year to start that narrative.
Yeah, and the one thing about Purdy, too, you want to talk about, just going forward, like this is his first full season starting. Okay, he's 24 years old. And yes, he was the last pick in the freaking draft. Give Kyle Shanahan another offseason with this kid. He's just going to be molded into and continue to develop and just become an even better quarterback than he's been. I mean, the sky is, I don't care what anybody says. The sky is the limit for Brock Purdy. And this is year 2. And they've dealt with things this year, sure. They dealt with slow starts in the postseason games. They found a way to get here. It's not easy to get here, but they are. Give them credit. Give everybody credit that has been part of the Brock Purdy, San Francisco 49ers development to now get here.
So when we started off by saying you're 5-0 in your Super Bowl predictions.
5-0.
Do you have one for this week? Why not if you don't?
Because of it's Purdy. Purdy's my problem because I've seen him late in games and I've seen him just take over, and I know what Mahomes is, and I know what that defense has been doing. So my one issue is Purdy, but I don't trust the San Francisco 49er defense right now. I will get there. I will get to a prediction in the next couple of days, but I don't. I mean, I lean 49ers one day and I lean the Chiefs the next day. I don't know yet.
I've been leaning Chiefs this whole week since it was set on Sunday. I've been leaning Chiefs. I'm still leaning Chiefs. Now that I look back, I'm 4-1 in the Super Bowl predictions, but I don't think 4-1.
Which one were you wrong on?
I picked, ironically, San Fran to beat KC the first time through.
Okay.
So this is, I don't think it's a, now that I look back at it, though, I felt like there was some kind of obvious ones. Always thought Tampa Bay was better, especially with the Kansas City offensive line.
Yeah.
Always thought the Rams were way better than Cincinnati. Only a 3-point game, though. Kansas City last year I loved, and in that Rams Patriots, I did not think Goff was going to do anything. He did not do anything. And those are the last 5 Super Bowls. And now we're here trying to go 6-0. But I do think it's going to be the Chiefs, only because I love the Chiefs' ability to cross midfield every play. And now these last 2 weeks, we've seen them. We saw them last week against the defense that's better than San Francisco's. We mentioned, you could see it it's on Instagram, it's on TikTok. We mentioned last week, this Niners defense has not been that good. It does not make you feel like the Chiefs are getting the best defense in the league. The Chiefs have the better defense in the game between these two teams. And those factors of my trust in Mahomes and how great the Chiefs defense is and has been is the reason that I would take the Chiefs in this game. I think it'll be lower scoring, not low scoring, but lower scoring where there's going to be a good amount of punts. There's going to be a lot of tough decisions as to, do we kick a field goal here? Do we go for it on 4th down and 2 or 3? Thank God Dan Campbell's not coaching in this game. I mean, thank the Lord that Dan Campbell's not coaching in this game, because these two coaches are going to have to play the way I envision it. The two coaches are going to play a massive role in managing this game, aside from the play calling aspect that can win or lose their teams this game, whether it be a mistake in the first quarter or in the fourth. They're going to have to be perfect all night.
One thing I like about in this game, I like the under, like you mentioned. I think it's a lower scoring game. So I think the under is 44.5, 45, whatever. I like the under in this game. One thing that San Francisco is going to have to do that not many teams that have played Kansas City in the postseason or Super Bowl have done, besides for, if you want to say the Bengals in 21 and definitely the Buccaneers in that Super Bowl, they need to pressure Mahomes. And he doesn't get sacked in the postseason. He doesn't. Now, Tooney might. How do you pronounce his name? Is it Tooney or Tooney?
Tooney, I think. No, two like Too knee or
TWO. Tooney is probably not playing. I mean, he's trending towards not playing again in this game. So if the 49ers are going to have any chance in this one, they have to pressure Mahomes, make him feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I think they'll be able to do that a little bit, not to the extent that the Buccaneers were able to do 3 years ago, but I think they'll get some pressure on it. That Super Bowl's 3 years ago. That is scary, man. That is absolutely scary. That's 3 years ago.
That's crazy, man. It feels like Mahomes. I mean, it feels like Brady's been in the league for a while, though, and it's only been 1 year, so.
Yeah, but he was irrelevant last year. He was irrelevant last year.
Once you get in Todd Bowles' hands. I tell you who's an X factor in this game. You talk about pressure. The lazy bum at right end, Chase Young on San Francisco. One of the bigger busts of the last few years, but no one likes to talk about that. Chase Young, who was jogging after Jahmyr Gibbs last week on a touchdown in Lions versus 49ers. This is a player that the Niners need to come through big this week against Kansas City. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be Bosa versus Juwan Taylor for a lot of that game. And that could be a matchup that ruins the entire day. But one thing Andy Reid does really well is take pressure off his quarterback by running the ball when he needs to, running it at appropriate times, and keeping the defense on their heels a little bit with his play calling.
Where is this defensive line, though? Like, where are these guys? Where's Armstead? Where's Hargrave? Where are they making big plays? The last couple of weeks, I have not seen them. Bosa's made a couple of big plays here and there. We saw a big run stop by Chase Young, but other than that, he's been terrible. So these guys need to step up. You're right, though. When you feel there's a mismatch on the offensive line and defensive line for Kansas City, Andy Reid finds a way to mask it. That's what they do best. And we broke that down last week, just how good of a coach Reid is. And when there's a mismatch and you think it's going to be a mismatch, he tells you, no, we're going to fix these problems.
Yeah, and yet Bosa, how about the comment about the Chiefs tackle saying they hold a lot? I think there's two things that could come from that. One is the referees are actually on it a little bit in that game. The other one is the Chiefs are just going to totally take you out of the game because you said one word. And that's actually the route I almost see it going, man. Teams that have spoken about the Chiefs publicly negatively about whoever on their team, whether somebody said something about the 53rd man who's not even going to dress on Sunday or a player that starts every week, it seems to come back to bite him.
Yeah, but I think I don't know if his comments were like, and they do come across as, a shot, but like, I don't think they were. I think
No, they were just an honest truth.
He's not that. I mean, he seems like a weird guy, weird fella, Nick Bosa. And he was just like, yeah, they hold a lot. Like, all right, like give me something more here, Nick. But I don't take it as he was taking a shot at them. He's a weird cat, and I think he's a fantastic player that will definitely make an impact and make plays on Sunday.
He's going to have to, because the rest of the guys in that line, as you said, have not been impact players, especially down the stretch here. I mean, Hargrave had a nice regular season in pass rush, 7 sacks in the pass rush from the interior. That's a nice season. You had Armstead only had 5 sacks. Bosa ended up with 10.5, but he had a slow first half. And Chase Young had 2.5 sacks this year. Chase Young's not good. He's not a premier defensive lineman or pass rusher. It's just he's not. And that's wild to me, man, because it's a contract year for him and he's playing on a Super Bowl team. Normally, he started to remind me of Jadeveon Clowney a little bit, but Clowney would have big contract years. He'd come up big in the postseason. That year he was on Seattle. They played 2 playoff games. He came up big for them in that postseason. He got paid after. Clowney was able to turn it on. Chase Young's not even turning it on at all, and he's jogging.
He's lazy.
Barely even jogging on that play with Gibbs. And I mean, you just got to wonder, you might have to throw him into a rotation for this week's game because he has not been impactful.
There's no motor there. That wouldn't be a bad idea. If you have guys that you trust, get them in there. You're 100% right. Get a rotation. Hargrave, you mentioned Hargrave, really good this season. I mean, he's a really good player, and nobody talks about him. When we talk about the interior defensive linemen, and I'm guilty of this as well. We talk about Quinn Williams, Dexter Lawrence, Chris Jones, Aaron Donald, all these guys. We never mention Hargrave. He's almost as good as these guys. So he's going to have to make big plays, especially if Tooney's out and there's a weakness up the middle where you have backup players playing guard. You have to make an impact in this game if you're in this interior defensive line. And I think that the game is going to be one up front, just like most games are. If they could get hands in the face, pressure on Mahomes, they're going to have a really good chance to win this because Purdy and McCaffrey and Debo, they're going to make big impacts.
And the offense has totally ran through Kelce in this postseason. What do you think of that matchup now? If there's one team that could shut Kelce down, it's these guys, and Baltimore would have been second. But these guys with Warner and Greenlaw, this is a tough matchup for Kelce to excel in.
Yeah, but you know what? You just mentioned Baltimore would have done a good job too. We would have thought Baltimore would have done a good job. When you have these two playing the way they are in the postseason and they're just on and they're connecting, it doesn't matter who's playing linebacker for me. So yes, you're right. This is the ideal matchup. If you're the San Francisco 49ers, you like your guys versus Kelce here, but how could you trust that you're going to stop these two guys? How are you going to trust that you could stop this connection between Mahomes and Kelce? I don't think so. I still think Kelce has a nice game. Maybe they limit him a little bit, and that might be enough. But you do like the matchup if you're San Francisco. Just can't trust it.
Yeah, and it just last week, I thought that was the best. So I take it back. I thought that was the best chance a team had at stopping Kelce because you have Roquan Smith, who you have Kyle Hamilton, who's been unbelievable, and we mentioned it last week. First drive of the game, they go right at Hamilton and tell you're not stopping this duo. You're not stopping Kelce. So that was a statement to start. I'd expect similar stuff this week, but I'm pumped for this game, man. A lot of people are saying it's a bad matchup. I don't understand where you get that from.
I don't understand how you could possibly say that. I just don't.
If you've been watching all year, man, this is not a bad matchup at all.
I think there's Chief fatigue. I think there's 100% Chief fatigue.
There's
around
definitely
the country.
Chief fatigue, but I don't think this was the case with the Patriots. I felt that people didn't say the same stuff.
No, I think people were sick of the Patriots. But
Somehow
also,
everyone I knew was a Patriots fan for 10 years. That's
But
somehow
remember,
what happened.
they had a break, right? I mean, they went in 07. That early on they won a few. They go in 07, they lose. Then there was a break, right? And then they started again. So we've kind of just been right now at 6 straight years of the Chiefs, just having this dominance. So maybe there's going to be a break. I don't think so, though. But it wasn't as, consecutive with New England. But I think people were sick of New England by the time you got to that, Rams, Patriots Super Bowl. Like, people wanted the Chiefs. You know how badly people wanted the Chiefs that year in 18?
Yeah. People did.
They wanted that rematch of that Monday night game, which is overrated. I mean, yeah, it was exciting, but like, you guys don't like defense?
Well, all right. So I'm a sucker I kind of enjoyed the Rams Patriots Super Bowl. Maybe I could use a little more offense.
I would have liked more offense.
But I loved seeing Edelman, the way he played and showed up in the playoffs. I love seeing the way that Gronk showed up that whole postseason. He had the big catch off the left sideline, put him inside the 5-yard line, scored the only touchdown of the game on the next play. I think Sony Michel ran it in. But that was a really good game, and Stephon Gilmore was terrific in that game. Goff botched the throw to Brandon Cooks, if you remember that. Right down the middle, had him wide open and saw him way late, botched that play. But that was a good Super Bowl too. The Monday night game was a little bit overrated. You're right. That's a good call because everybody says every time. I had somebody say to me once, that's a pretty good football fan, said this was a bad game. And it was like probably 27-21 game. And I'm thinking, how do you think that was a bad game? He goes, it wasn't as good as Chiefs Rams on Monday night. They scored over 100 points. Sorry, that's the only time it's ever happened.
You gotta see defense. I'm a sucker for pitchers duels in baseball. Like, I like the 1-0 games, the 2-0 games. Those are my kind of baseball games. The perfect, bless you, the perfect matchups and scores for me. Bless you one more time. I really like that first Chiefs 49ers game. That was good. Those giant Super Bowls, 21-17. You get a little scoring, but you get the defense. Like, those are my kind of football games there. That game, the 2017 game, and I know I'm bringing up Giants, past postseason games, but that one against the Niners, that's a classic game. So personally, those are the games I like to see. Sure, that Chiefs-Eagles game last year was incredibly exciting, but it's not one of the better games I've ever watched.
All right, so do this for me. We're going to end this topic by going back to the beginning. Rank the last 5 Super Bowls in anticipation, and then put this one where you think it is. So you have Chiefs Niners this year, Chiefs Eagles last year, Rams Bengals, Bucks Chiefs, Chiefs Niners, Rams Patriots.
All right, so 1 for me is Tampa versus Kansas City. Number 2 would be Kansas City versus Philadelphia. Number 3 would be Kansas City versus San Francisco the first time. No, I'll go. Number 3 would be New England versus the Rams. Number 4 would be Kansas City versus San Francisco the first time. And then number 5 would be the Rams Bengals. And if I had to put this one in here, I'd say this is second only behind Tampa Bay versus the Chiefs.
Yeah, that's a good list. I'd probably have to agree with that one. But
really?
This year, definitely. Yeah, this year definitely figures right in because this is an awesome game, man. This is going to be a good game. I could see a world where this is a lousy game. I could, if the Chiefs just totally control it from the start of the game and Purdy doesn't even give the team a chance. I could see Purdy playing poor enough and really just the Niners offense playing poor enough to the point where they can't even make one of those fourth quarter comebacks. I do see a possibility for that. I don't think it would happen though, because at some point McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, or Kittle make a big play that gets the momentum going. There's way too much around Purdy to not have that big play happen that lights a spark.
Let me say this. And I've been, defending the Kansas City Chiefs and defending this defense for weeks now as to why I think they're going to continue to win. But let me ask you this. Look at what they had to deal with last week against the Ravens, right? There's really no star running back. You're dealing with the quarterback, 60% Mark Andrews, and some wide receivers. go to the week prior. You're dealing with Josh Allen, fantastic quarterback. We know that. James Cook made some plays in that game, so you're dealing with a pretty good running back. And then you're dealing with a receiver who struggled, and just a bunch of other wide receivers just aren't very good. And then the Dolphins are the Dolphins. I'm not even going to count that.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to say is there's a lot with this 49ers offense that you have to worry about. We mentioned it. McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle. Those are a lot of guys that I don't know if this defense is ready and seen so much star power on one offense. Are they ready to deal with this many guys?
I'm going to say, that's a great question, man. That's a great one,
question.
Mike. One of your
Good
first.
question.
We've been doing this for 2 or 3 months. That's your first good one.
Look at what they've dealt with. They have not dealt with star power on the outside.
So they
season.
all right, so I'll say this. The last few seasons they have. And you can't count the Miami game this year because Tua could not throw the ball in that weather. They knew they didn't have to actually defend the pass too much. And the one play to Tyreek Hill that ended up in a touchdown actually should not have if the defense played that down well. But I think they've had enough games with Cincinnati. They've had enough bouts with Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. They've had enough games against, they played that Buccaneers team and they got killed. The Bucs team probably easily has the most star power in comparison to San Fran out of the teams that KC has played in their run. So the Bucs are that team, but I think Spags has just been around enough to be able to shut this down. I mean, this is the guy who shut down the 2007 Patriots in the Super Bowl. This is that defensive coach. And he has not as great of a defense as the Giants did in 2007, but he has a good enough one to kind of emulate some of that dominance. And I think that, I tell you, out of every coach, I don't even want to hear a defensive head coach, with the exception of Bill Belichick, but now not an employed coach. There is not a coach I'd rather have run my defense in big games than Steve Spagnuolo. There's not. And no coordinator, no head coach that I would pick over him except Belichick.
Yeah, he's where you have the confidence, right? Especially if you're a Chiefs fan and you think about that question, because he's seen it. And you're right. I mean, throughout the years, even dealing with that Eagles team, the Eagles put up a really good fight last year. I mean, some say they should have won. I mean, they shouldn't have won. They lost the game, but it was a really tightly contested game. And they have a ton of weapons. And they did put up 35 points against them. Is Kansas City ready to get into a shootout? I don't think you're going to get there, but are they ready to get into a shootout? Probably. I think they're ready for anything. So, yeah, you keep saying it. It's going to be a fantastic, fantastic game. And Spags is the guy. Spags is the guy.
He is. So let's move on now to the awards.
Yeah.
Just before the Super Bowl, we'll get the awards. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. This is not us picking our predictions. We're not saying who we think is going to win because most of them we already know, but some of them, Mike, will have different answers than the guys who actually win. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. We'll start with the most coveted, the one that we've spoke about a lot, the MVP.
Yeah. So we have spoke about this a lot, and I kind of just went chalk and said, oh, yeah, it's Lamar. It's Lamar. And it's going to be Lamar. Right? Lamar is going to win the MVP, but I don't think he should. I just don't think he's the most valuable player. I keep looking at the numbers and I'm saying he had a good season, a really solid season, but should this end with him winning the most valuable player award? And it should not. I do not think he should be the MVP. And I don't think you've had a quarterback this season that seriously deserves the consideration of being considered the best and most valuable player. So I'm finally going to get there. I'm finally going to put this on record where I believe that Christian McCaffrey should get the award. He's been the best offensive player in the sport all season long. And I don't know if he's most valuable in terms of value to your team, because I think that's Josh Allen. But in terms of the way we give the award out, I think the best player this season has been Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, so I would agree with this. He's who I would vote for. It's going to be Lamar. And I'm going to reiterate to you my point that I think this MVP will be looked back on in 10, 15, 20 years. And you may say, how did Lamar Jackson win that MVP? And the comparison I always give, the Steve Nash MVPs where he beat out Kobe and Shaq, and people to this day will tell you he should not have won them. And when you look back at the stats, it's absolutely true. He statistically should not have won them. And he felt in the same way that Lamar feels, where, yeah, he was the best at the position the whole year, but he's probably not the most dominant player. And maybe it's McCaffrey getting inducted into the Hall of Fame that makes us say that and look back, because McCaffrey had an unbelievable season. You had Dak Prescott statistically had a much better year than Lamar Jackson did. And that just goes to show you that it's not an open choice. I can understand Lamar winning, and it doesn't upset me. But how it's so unanimous and agreed upon blows my mind, because I would think you'd have a really decent portion of people who are going to say Lamar, who would say Allen for the Bills' end of season surge, who would say McCaffrey, who might even say Tyreek Hill or Tua. Even Purdy should be getting some more love than he is.
How is he not?
And Lamar is just totally running away with this. I love Lamar. I'm as big of a Lamar fan as you will find, but this should not be a clear cut. He's minus 10,000 to win this award. This should not be a clear cut win for Lamar. It just absolutely was not that dominant.
I mean, Purdy has, and again, we account for the rushing, and I'll get to that in a minute, but just look at Purdy. I mean, he led the league in passer rating and QBR. He had 31 touchdowns, only 11 interceptions. I mean, what? Because he had one bad game against Lamar on Christmas Day when the world was watching, and we're going to take it away from him just like that? I don't agree with that. I can't get on board with that. And you want to talk about, both other quarterbacks that deserved it. Josh Allen had 44 total touchdowns this year. I mean, he had 15 rushing touchdowns. Are we serious? And a lot of those were not just, tush pushes into the end zone like Jalen Hurts are. It was a lot of big-time runs that he made, and big-time plays. So I just think if you're going to give it to a quarterback, I would have considered Josh Allen over Lamar. But, yeah, we are agreed upon here where I think this is the year you would have given it to the non-quarterback.
And I'm going to throw another name I'd throw in is Dak, dude. Dak had a really, really good season. Totally underrated year. 4,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He was second in QBR. He had a better completion percentage than Lamar and Allen. And on the ground, I'm pulling it right now, he only had 2 touchdowns, so 38 total and 9 turnovers. But that's a really nice year from Prescott. So as far as stats go, Lamar was not better than these guys in the box score. I think he was better than both of them at quarterback, but there was no player better than McCaffrey the entire season. He kept defenses up at night more than anybody. He dominated every week. They had that every game, anytime touchdown score streak going where he would get in every time. People were saying the next day on Mondays, if you bet McCaffrey and rolled it over every time, you'd have $10 billion. And
he's like minus 200 to score in the Super Bowl. It's unheard of that his odds are like that in any game.
He was unbelievable this year, and he was the driving force behind the best, most complete offense in the league. Maybe it was Detroit even, but it was a more complete and more feared offense than Miami. I thought Miami was just too much flash and explosion for me. I needed a little bit more of a complete offense, but San Fran felt like they had it the whole season, and it's because of McCaffrey. That trade was incredible. Carolina got nothing back in that. They got a great return at the time, and they botched the whole thing with an awful draft, and now they're in a whole rebuild. But you're not going to find a group of players as valuable as McCaffrey has been to this Niners team with those 4 picks that you gave up. So I like McCaffrey for the MVP. I know it's going to be Lamar, but I'm glad we're agreed on that. How about for offensive player of the year? I think McCaffrey's the lock.
Right. No need to talk about it.
This award's dumb too.
Yes.
Just got to throw that out there, because an offensive player wins MVP, and then the offensive player of the year is the second in MVP. So that's always dumb.
Whatever. Doesn't make sense. But in this case, I mean, McCaffrey's not going to win the MVP, but this is 100% McCaffrey.
And then defensive player of the year, I think Garrett is just an all-around favorite for this. I like Garrett. I like a few other guys too. And so I'll take Garrett for defensive player of the year, but I like Roquan Smith as well. Maybe a big underdog. I thought he was great in that Ravens defense, though.
Has this award, like, or maybe it's just this year, kind of like lost its lust a little bit? Because, like, there are so many great defensive players, and there's always so many great defensive players, but there's so many great defensive players playing the same position right now, and it feels like a pass rusher's award. So it's going to go to one of these defensive ends. I think the odds-on favorite right now is Myles Garrett, but if you told me you gave it to TJ Watt, or you told me you gave it to Micah Parsons, who's probably the best defensive player still in the league right now, Micah Parsons, I don't, like, I don't care. Like, I know these guys are great and Garrett deserves it, but all of these guys really deserve it. They're that good.
They are. It's a loaded group. It's a real golden age of edge rushers right now. You have Hall of Fame edge rushers on 6 or 7 teams, and then a really good group of pass rushers on the interior as well. Quinnen Williams, Aaron Donald. We talked about Hargrave, Dexter Lawrence. It's a great group of defensive linemen in the league, and Max Crosby is as good as anyone also. He does not get the respect. He plays every single down.
Yeah.
He's great.
He's a madman. He's great. He's on the list. Where is he on this odds list? He's 4th. So I think he's starting to get more recognition as time goes on now, but yeah, he's fantastic. And he's for Antonio Pierce, I mean, he's got to be one of the main reasons why you're itching to get back and wanting to coach that team, to be able to coach that guy. He's special.
Also, one of the reasons you don't get recognition is if your team doesn't win. You got to be playing national games. You got to be playing playoffs to get that ultimate recognition. So he hasn't, and I think that's a big part of the reason. Offensive Rookie of the Year, if you want to talk about it, it's Stroud.
Yes,
but
100%.
Incredible that you could have, if somebody had told you before the year that the rookie receiving record would once again be broken by Puka Nacua, a 5th-round pick, or a 3rd-round pick, I don't know which one, and I think it was 5th.
5th.
And if somebody told you that Nacua was going to break that and not win Rookie of the Year, that's something, because Stroud really was one of the 7 best quarterbacks in the league this season.
So Odell broke it in his rookie year in 12 games, correct?
Yeah.
And then he just broke it. So it's like,
well, no, but Jefferson broke it also.
Jefferson broke it. Okay, so
actually, I think Odell broke I'm trying to think of which record he broke, because Jefferson had the receptions and yards.
I'm looking it up now.
He broke one of Randy Moss's because it was a big Vikings thing, but that might have been for touchdowns in a rookie season.
No, he did. He broke Odell's record. He had 16 games. He had 1,400 yards. Odell had 1,300 yards in his rookie year in the 12 games. But still, I mean, Odell is still, in my mind, like the receiver rookie king, because if he played all those games, I mean, oh my God. But credit to Puka, man. It's an impressive season, and you wish you could give a guy like him recognition, but Stroud is he's too good. He's too good.
They should just do this is gonna be a terrible joke. They should just do Offensive Rookie of the Year and then Offensive Rookie Player of the Year, so they can give it to whoever the second best guy was.
Yeah, that's a nice MVP, Offensive Player of the Year joke. Good job, Kevin.
That was a bad one. I told you before it happened. It was gonna be bad.
Yeah.
So Defensive Rookie of the Year, I'd give it to Carter. I know he's the favorite. He was just the best this year, and it actually, contrary to popular belief, not a great defensive rookie class.
No,
I did not think it was very good.
It was supposed to be loaded, and then Will Anderson had a bad start to the year. I would give it to Will Anderson. Down the stretch, he was better than Jalen Carter. He kind of fell asleep a little bit during the year. A little underwhelming. He got off to a great start, and he's still a force, and he's going to be a really good player. But for a guy that was hyped up so much, I don't know. I was a little bit underwhelmed watching him. I'll give it to Anderson because he had the best stretch out of any of these guys, and it was at the most important time for his team when his team was competing for a playoff spot. He was at his best. So I'll go Will Anderson here. That would be my difference. And it's a close race. It's not like it's a
And I tell you who's right there with him is Kobe Turner from the Rams. How about the Rams? Everyone thought they were kind of done. And they packed it in so much with the picks after that Super Bowl, and they sold their soul to win one, and I'm fine with that. No knock on them for that. Stafford's totally back. You now have a star pass rusher right next to Aaron Donald, who is a rookie. So you're just going to pass the torch to him, worst case scenario, if they don't just dominate together for the next 4 years or so. So you have that. You have Puka and Kupp on the offensive side. Kyron Williams, second team All-Pro running back. So they're at that stage now where it's let's beef up the trenches maybe a little bit, add another playmaker or two on defense, and we're right back into the mix. I tell you, that team is probably right now, without the offseason and the draft happening, that team's probably the biggest threat to San Francisco to knock them off next season.
100%. And when you give Les Snead and Sean McVay some draft picks, I mean, look what freaking happens.
Great.
They hit on these picks, and you want to give credit to McVay's offense, fine, but he's drafting with Snead to bring these players in that work with him. So, I mean, I remember that debate of whether or not McVay should go into the booth for Amazon Prime and be the color analyst. Like, get the hell out of here. This guy can still coach. He can draft. And I mean, he's one of the highest paid coaches in the league. So we obviously know that, but man, they are scary. And if they have draft picks, which they do, watch out for them. You're 100% correct about them possibly being the team taking out San Francisco.
They have the most day 3 picks in the league this year in the draft. So I think you'll see them trade those for a couple of veteran players, maybe some developmental, maybe some veterans who are on expiring contracts that teams are just looking to cap dump. So they have a lot of weapons at their disposal to make a huge jump from fringe wild card to division contender with the 49ers. Tell you one guy I could see them getting is Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
To the Rams. You think that McVay wouldn't love to send a 6th or a 7th rounder and have him sit behind Stafford for the next 2 years or so? And that's a great spot for him to end up if he's going to turn into anything. I could see that absolutely happening this year.
That'll be one of the spots where I think Wilson would sort of request a trade. I mean, he's from, the West over there on the western side of the country. So, get him over there. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the places you want to go where Baker Mayfield resurrected his career. Why wouldn't he want to go there? So makes 100% sense for Zach. And yeah, I mean, I want to see Les Snead hit on some of these draft picks. So I love nothing more than late round picks becoming, really good players. It just shows the work of the coaches and the scouting departments of these teams. It's impressive.
I'm trying to think of who said it. It was a Super Bowl winning GM said it. And I think it was Bill Polian. And he said when he was with the Colts, he said, anyone can draft on day 1. Most guys that are pretty good can draft on day 2, but day 3 is only for the guys that win championships. And the guys that hit on those picks are the guys that win championships. And that's Les Snead, man. Exactly is Les Snead, because in drafts where he only has 4 picks and all of them are on day 3, they leave with at least 1 starter. And they leave with good players on day 3. And maybe 1 starter who's an all-pro like Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua. I mean, these are superstar playmakers that teams don't find with the 5th pick in the draft, let alone the 150th. And Les Snead hits them.
Yeah. Give him credit. I'm on Twitter right now for the first time in a while, and it looks like Pat Mahomes' dad was arrested for a DWI Saturday night in Texas, and apparently it's his 3rd one.
Nice. It's a former Met. That's kind of what you'd expect.
Former Met, yeah.
From an 86 Met alumni, that's what you'd expect.
That stuff. No, I don't think he was an 86 Met. I think he was in the 90s.
He was.
No,
he was on the second World Series team when the Yankees mopped him up.
Right. Okay.
That was because I knew he appeared in the World Series, and there's very few options for the Mets when it comes to those.
Thanks. As we get set for baseball season, we're all excited.
We gotta warm up a little bit here, get ourselves going a bit with our hate for each other. Not even each other's teams, just each other.
Yes, taking shots at our teams, man.
All right, let's rip through these last 2 awards quick. This one I actually have to take a minute on. The Comeback Player of the Year, which is the worst award in the sport because it is an absolute merge of Comeback Player and Most Improved Player.
Yeah.
What did Baker Mayfield come back from? Being horrible. Lamar was hurt for a couple games last year. It's just an awful, awful award. But I would vote for Hamlin here, and maybe that's controversial to a lot of people. Hamlin will be my vote. I don't think you're wrong if you don't vote for him, but he is my choice here, and I'll explain why in a moment. I want to hear yours, though.
Yeah, I completely disagree with you. I mean, he comes back, but it's like, and the award sucks. You're 100% right. My guy would be Mayfield. I mean, he came back from being ass. That's what it is. He came back from sucking. So he was the most improved. He came back from the most and leaped to an end that none of these guys have. So yeah, mine would be Mayfield here. I understand Flacco, even if you want to give it to Flacco, but not Hamlin. Nothing. It's going to be Hamlin. I wouldn't give it to Hamlin.
So let me give you my explanation for Hamlin, because, and you're not one of these people, but a lot of people are really, really upset about the reality that he's probably going to win this award. For Damar Hamlin as a human being to have died playing football and then to play again. Because if I died on the football field and I was brought back, I would have never stepped back on a field again.
Yeah.
So for him to come back out on the field and actually appear in games, I don't care if he played a snap, to appear in a game and run the risk again of having to even make a tackle is impressive to me just from a human standpoint. But I will reiterate, we need a most improved player award, because Baker Mayfield should absolutely be getting a most improved player award. Geno Smith should have absolutely been a most improved player award winner. Ryan Tannehill. These are not comebacks to me. These are guys who
didn't Geno win it last season?
He did, but they should be winning most improved players, not comebacks. Because then you can cut these lists in half and elevate a guy such as Breece Hall, who tore his ACL, missed almost his entire rookie season after a great start, and was 4th in total yards this year.
Well, Breece not being on the final, whatever it is.
He's not going to be a top 5 finisher, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's pathetic. That's a crime.
That's a ridiculous one. And then how is Lamar, hurt for almost half the year last year, going to win MVP and not be in the top 4 for comeback player of the year, or even the top? Like Russell Wilson is 5th. He's going to get cut in a month. And he was good this year. We've talked about that. I mean,
no Russ disrespect.
Him getting cut is not a reflection of his season, to be quite honest. But he was not better than Lamar Jackson, Breece Hall, T.J. Watt. He wasn't than any of those guys.
The award sucks.
So the award stinks, and it's the totality. Whoever wins it, I could honestly care less, because it's really just a group of not very good players that are up for it every year, because it's the worst players from last year who got a little bit better this year. All right, I love the coach of the year. I'm a big coach guy. I always talk about coaches. Who is yours right here? It's tough. There are 5 really great candidates in this mix for me, and one guy I'll say that should be in that top 5, 6 is Matt LaFleur.
I was about to say that. I didn't think you were going to say that.
An awesome job this year. And you're a bigger fan of his than I am. He did an awesome job this year. The way he righted the ship, they got themselves into the playoffs. I don't think the roster is exceptional, but it's good. They're only 2 years removed from being a top seed. They're the youngest team to win a game in playoff history, I believe. And LaFleur he might not even be a top 8 finisher for this award. So your thoughts on this one?
That's BS. I didn't think you were going to bring that up. I'm like, I'm going to come in here with LaFleur. You do it. I mean, Campbell's 4th on the odds list. Are you kidding me?
No, he had a great roster, man. You cannot say coach of the year for a guy that had, listen, I'll keep saying it. People, you can call me crazy, who had probably the best roster in the league, the most complete team in the league, along with San Francisco. And he has all-star coordinators next to him. That's not a guy that qualifies for coach of the year, and was in a division that quite honestly was awful. Even with Green Bay, most of the season, Green Bay was pedestrian. Yeah. So I don't like Campbell in the mix for this one. Who would you give it to, though? Who would get your vote?
100% Stefanski, but I think like the rest of the list matters. So 100% it's Stefanski. What they dealt with this year, 4 different quarterbacks to be as good as they were at one point. People were picking them to be a dark horse Super Bowl team with their 4th-string quarterback. The job that he did to rally the troops, and they lost so many guys on defense too. That whole staff deserves credit. So my guy would be Stefanski, no doubt. but the rest of the list matters. Steichen's very good. He deserves to be up there. D'Amico deserves there. I think McVay deserves more love too. I mean, the job that he did, like we just mentioned, a younger team, going through a rebuilding phase, Stafford coming off the big injury to now be in the playoffs and lose by 1 to a team that was in the NFC Championship game. He did a great job with this roster. So those will be my guys, but it's Stefanski.
Stefanski's going to be the winner here. I would throw my vote to D'Amico Ryans because I remember sitting here back in April. And as you said, I'll first just emphasize that these guys are all terrific. It's a really good field. It's one of the better fields in the last few years for this award. But D'Amico, rookie head coach, coaching a team that I just thought was going to be such a mess. I hated the Will Anderson pick, not because I hated the player, loved him at the draft, but because I was thinking, who is Stroud even throwing to? You got this quarterback with the second pick. You have no weapons. It turns out they have 2 really talented weapons. They developed their draft picks nicely from this past year. He turned some journeymen practice squad guys into stars this season. Blake Cashman being at the front of it. Derek Stingley, who seemed to be a disaster pick, especially because the pick after was Sauce Gardner, who's a 2-time All-Pro now. Stingley was in the top 5-6 corners in the entire league. I like D'Amico for this award, but it's a good one. Now, I will also say this about the award. This one last year, your boy won it.
Yes.
And I did not think he would not have gotten my vote, but the Coach of the Year is the one award where the odds don't matter that much. In the winners, if you look back at the last few winners, the favorites for the award oftentimes don't actually bring home the hardware.
Really?
Yeah, this is the one award. I mean, Stefanski's minus 1,000, but last year, Shanahan was the favorite, and they were the second best team in the NFC on their third quarterback, and Purdy was great, and it was kind of just no matter how many times this guy gets hurt, their quarterback gets hurt, Shanahan keeps rolling, and the Niners keep rolling.
So was Shanahan your guy last year?
Yeah, I would have picked Shanahan. And then my second vote would have been Doug Peterson for the job he did in Jacksonville a year after Urban Meyer's mess. And then I would have went Dable, but that's a good 3 also. I wasn't upset to see Dable win it. I love this group of coaches, though. I wish LaFleur was in the mix because he had an awesome season. He was better. For me, he was better than Harbaugh. He was better than Campbell. He was better than McVay. He might have been better than Steichen, even though Steichen did a great job. But LaFleur should absolutely be in this mix, 100%.
Yeah, like LaFleur. I don't know if I would have put LaFleur ahead of those 3, the D'Amico, Steichen, Stefanski, but he's up there. He's I think he's 4 for me.
All right, to wrap up, we're just going to talk a little bit about the coaching news that's gone down the last week. We could start out with the Dan Quinn hire. I think it's the worst hire in a long time here, probably since I'm trying to think, but probably since the Texans hired Dave Culley 3 years ago. This is just a total mess of a hire. I don't know if you agree with me, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I couldn't disagree with you more. Let me ask you, does it have anything to do with the expectation that Ben Johnson was going to be the guy here?
No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that I think Dan Quinn stinks.
See, I don't think Dan Quinn stinks. I'm not of that belief. I think Quinn is a solid coach. I mean, we know the job he did with Dallas and that defense. And when he got there, they were a mess. And sure, they brought in Parsons and then things were fixed. But I think you got to give Quinn credit not only for the development of Parsons, but just the overall improvement of that defense. And I don't think, the job that he did in Atlanta was that bad. I don't think that he was, the main reason why that team was going down the tube. Do I think it was time for a change? Probably, but I'm not of the belief that he was the problem in Atlanta. I think he deserves a second shot. I think teams realize he deserved a second shot. And he's turned down jobs in the past. I mean, he turned down the Denver job. I think it was either 2 years ago when they hired Hackett or last year. I'm pretty sure it was the year they hired Hackett. Mm-hmm. He turned down, I think, Arizona's job. So he's been in the mix for a lot of different vacancies, and he's kind of, withdrew his name from consideration. So I think for him to now take this one, I think it matters because he had a good job. I mean, being the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator is not a bad job in terms of, NFL jobs. And, I think that was, that meant a lot to him. And so for him to take this job, it really must be a good situation. And I think it is. I think Washington's an attractive job.
I think Washington's a pretty attractive job. Don't get me wrong. I just cannot believe this is who they walked away with. Once Shanahan left Atlanta, the team was a mess. It declined so fast. He made an awful, awful staff move by replacing Shanahan with Steve Sarkisian, and his competition in that interview process was Matt LaFleur, who didn't get the job and said, all right, I'm going to Tennessee then. 2 years later, LaFleur's coaching in Atlanta. In Green Bay.
Yep.
And it's just, I think Dan Quinn's not good, man. I really don't. And his defense, nobody says this. His defense has not impressed me the last 2 years in Dallas. It really hasn't. And the Legion of Boom thing, Legion of Boom, I give him almost no credit for that one because the defense was good when he left. They went back to another Super Bowl. Pete Carroll was probably coaching majority of it. And they have 4 or 5 Hall of Famers on the defense, including another 3 or 4 guys who were Pro Bowlers, and then another couple of guys who were really quality second, third contract players. So I don't like Dan Quinn at all. Maybe I'm being too harsh. I feel like I am, but I got to just be honest with how I feel about it. Big games, this defense was not very good. They give up this year in Buffalo, 31. The following week in Miami, 22. They gave up 0 points to the Giants in week 1. That was a total blowout. Good job, Dan Quinn.
Thanks.
But just wanted to bring that one up again.
Yeah.
You give up 35 points to Seattle this year in a close game. I just don't. And then in the playoffs, they got the doors blown off them. I don't think that was as much Quinn's fault as it was the offense, just giving the ball away all day, giving all the momentum to Green Bay. But I do not like Dan Quinn at all. However, if Cliff Kingsbury is his offensive coordinator, it provides a glimmer of hope as far as Quinn acknowledges that maybe he's learned from the past, saying, I cannot try with a young offensive coordinator who hasn't proven themselves. Because Shanahan was proven. You knew he was great because of his dad and his work in Washington. So with Kingsbury, he's got an experienced play caller, at least, who's been a head coach before, who could run that whole side of the ball. I just don't. Man, the options that were out there, something's going to come out about why these guys didn't get hired, and there's going to be a reason for all of them. For Carroll, maybe it's he didn't want to coach anymore. He didn't want to coach this year, or just age wasn't attractive to the teams. Belichick wanted too much power, and he's very picky about his location.
That's what it was.
Vrabel's taking a year off, and he'll look at jobs again next year because the openings were not great either overall.
Well, Vrabel had interviewed for the Charger job, and obviously I think that was the consensus most attractive position, and that one was always really Jim Harbaugh. So, I think that's probably the only job Vrabel would have taken this offseason. So, yeah, Vrabel, I don't think there's anything weird there. He's taking the year off. Belichick wanted too much power. I think the interesting kind of, story that you're looking for is Ben Johnson. Why didn't he get a job? That's where we got to, kind of dive in. And I think it's, we've heard that it's the price, the price tag he wanted, the pay he wanted. I don't know. It's a weird situation though.
And now I think he starts to enter from Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan hiring territory. I'm not calling him the head coach they are, but just from the excitement to hire those guys, he goes from that kind of candidate to starting to enter, but not in the tier of Eric Bieniemy, where it's, why isn't this guy getting hired?
Yes.
Why isn't he taking jobs?
Yep.
And there will end up being more red flags than, good accolades to justify hiring him.
Well, the difference is I think that Ben Johnson was probably about to be offered the Washington job.
Yeah.
Like, I think that was his job, and Schefter did an interesting job of reporting the entire situation when, the world thought that he was just going to be Washington's head coach, and he was kind of like pumping the brakes on it, and then goes out and reports on the fact that he wanted too much money, which got some pushback from people around the league. Interesting. It's a very, very interesting situation that I would like answers to.
Yeah, I have no idea with that one, man. No idea. What do you think of the staff that they're building out in Vegas right now? Is Antonio Pierce going to make it or no?
See, I love the Cliff Kingsbury hire. I texted you, oh, great job. They're going to get Kingsbury. They hired Marvin Lewis, to kind of be, Pierce's right-hand man, an experienced head coach in this league. Now that Kingsbury is not going there, I have some questions. It's going to be Luke Getsy, right? I think, is that official or that's what they're doing? Not in love with it anymore. Definitely not in love with the scene in Vegas. And Kevin, that is not an attractive place. How is that job attractive? I mean, you got Devontae Adams, who, just is begging to play with Aaron Rodgers again. You don't have your answer at quarterback. You don't have a high enough pick this year to, select your future quarterback unless you're going to go the JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix route. I mean, not much with this team here.
I think this will end up being Russell Wilson in this spot.
Really?
I do. I think this is going to end up being Russ. I think they're going to keep all those big name guys. Devontae is going to end up staying with Pierce, at least for this year. And I don't think that a trade to the Jets would have worked out anyways with Adams if it had been a coach you didn't want. Max Crosby's going to be there, of course, because they kept Pierce. But I think that this is going to be Russell Wilson's spot. Maybe, I can't see Kirk Cousins ending up here, but I think this is going to be Russ's spot for a year, see if he's any good, and go the bridge quarterback route. I'm a big fan of the bridge quarterback route. Just a fun fact about me.
If you have the team, though, if you have that roster, then yeah, 100%. I love it.
They do. And I think
they have the team.
I think they have a team that can win 8 games and maybe have 8 wins in week 15. And you're saying, all right, can they win these last 2 or 3 tough games? And maybe they don't, maybe they do, but they have a team that could be in the mix for a long time. I mean, they were not mathematically eliminated this year until the last day of the season. Yeah, so
it's different, though, when you're playing in this conference where you're going to have Aaron Rodgers back with the Jets and you're going to have Joe Burrow playing and Herbert's got a real coach. The AFC is going to look a lot different this year because you're going to have these teams. You have more teams now. Like, we thought the AFC was loaded last year. Now, look, I mean, injuries are going to happen, sure, and we hope they don't to these bigger quarterbacks, but the AFC is even more loaded than we thought. So I think if this was the NFC, fine, go for it. You can possibly make a run in the NFC Championship game, but not in this AFC.
See, and you're right. I'm not going to say you're wrong, but I do disagree. I've been saying this the last few years since Deshaun Watson got traded to Cleveland and Russ was on Denver and it became the whole, oh my God, the AFC is so great. Something always goes wrong with 3 of the 10 teams we're looking at, right? And then there's always a team that we didn't think was going to be good, Houston or Indianapolis, that jumps right in and surprises everybody. So you might have a team like Pittsburgh might stink, and then the Jaguars might not be that good. Titans probably won't be that good. And then you have all these other teams that you're looking at. Patriots won't be that good. And then you have all the other teams you're saying, oh my God, any of these teams can make the run. Any of these teams could get into the playoffs. They're going to cannibalize each other, first of all. The divisions completely cannibalize each other. And then you're going to have those 3 guys that 2 of which are going to get hurt, Rodgers and Burrow. One of them's just going to stink, which was Russ last year, or Deshaun Watson, who I think just stinks. I think the Browns are worse with Watson, too. I think they are going to regress next year and probably not get into the playoffs. That's my early thoughts on the Browns, because Watson's not good. He is bad. And if Flacco didn't come in and just play hero ball the last 5 or 6 weeks, and he did, so I can't take it away from them, but if he didn't, they would not have made the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. I understand what you're saying, that these teams are just going to beat up on each other. But I think now, like, you're adding more to the mix. I mean, did we think that, a CJ Stroud and the Texans would come along, and, Steichen now with Anthony Richardson coming back. So there are younger teams now getting in the mix along with these veteran teams that we already had. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough for any of these teams. Go back to the Raiders. I mean, you're in a division with Herbert and Harbaugh and Reed and Mahomes. That's not easy.
And on the other end of everything, you don't get that easy division game because it's Sean Payton, and he's going to put together a great game plan every week. And if he's got any decent play at quarterback, they're going to be a good team. And then in the last bracket of that division, you have a pretty gritty, talented Raiders team that can pull a win out. They showed this past season with Antonio Pierce. They can pull a win out any week. So it's a fascinating conference to look to for next year. We still have the offseason and the draft to really figure out what every team does. But it still runs through KC, of course, and it's Super Bowl week. So KC again. It's KC again. No matter what, with all the hype, man, with all the hype about the AFC, it's still Kansas City.
I think talking this out, I think I'm leaning San Francisco.
Okay.
I think I'm leaning San Francisco, and I hate it because I don't want to go against KC. I don't. The last thing I want to do is go against this team.
Sounds like we're both going to be 5-1 in our picks for the last 6 years. After this one,
I got to keep this up.
Keep it up.
Don't ask me about the national championship game, though. Don't ask me my record in the national championship game.
Oh, it's really bad.
It got better. Not this season, but 2 years prior, it was on a 2-game winning streak. But other than that, a lot of money down the drain.
Wow, you really came up with Georgia to beat TCU?
Well,
wow.
I had a I'm at a minus 13.5 too. Okay, Kevin. And then I had Georgia to beat Bama when
you could have had them. You could have had them at minus 60.
Yeah, I should have done it.
You should have teased minus 60.
That was great.
You know how much money you would have got? Minus 60 odds.
It's a nice, easy night, man.
Yeah, that's a breeze. From the first snap, it was like, oh, damn.
So funny. So funny.
This is done. And then you had Michigan the week before that, too, last year. Got killed. All right. Well, any final thoughts here, Mike, in Super Bowl week?
No, just really excited. Taylor Swift will be there, so everybody can get mad. I can't wait to see Taylor and the suite. And, listen, you mentioned it's probably going to be a good game. It better be a good game. We deserve it. Because it was a sloppy year of football. Okay, it was a sloppy year of football. So we deserve this here. I
feel that the playoffs have justified it, though. And do you notice in the playoffs, the refs are totally
the refs.
They just like swallow the whistle a lot.
But it wasn't egregious. They didn't swallow it to a
cool with it. I'm cool with it. The worst example was the Rams-Lions game, where they did miss a few big pass interference calls down the stretch which favored the Lions that they didn't get called. But I was fine with that result, and I like it. I like no flags, and no one even goes off for concussion protocol anymore either. I mean, the first game against Miami, Mahomes' helmet cracked in half, and he just got up and played with the broken helmet. They didn't even tell him anything. I mean, they weren't like, hey, you got to go get it checked quick. Regular season, he's out for like 3 plays.
Playoffs, man. It's different animal. Come on.
The league has these refs trained. Regular season, try to protect the players the best you can. And postseason, everything's out there. I mean, you can do whatever you want. There's a couple tackles on Mahomes as well, and all the quarterbacks that I'd say, oh, it's going to be roughing the passer, and refs don't even think about it. They're not even considering it. You got the quarterback, you hit him, great job. Hit him low, great job. You brought him down.
Listen, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Absolutely love it. All right, Mike, great job. Recap. Next week, we will be recapping the Super Bowl and the entire season. We'll talk about whatever the awards finalists end up being. Make sure to follow BTO Media on Instagram, BTO Media on TikTok, on YouTube, which is where you're finding this now. Hit that subscribe button, like it. And also Hardline Sports Talk, the Playbook, which has been doing great numbers as of late. Make sure to check them out on Instagram and TikTok. And what am I missing?
Main thing
Monday, tomorrow. So definitely be there for that. Thanks for watching. We will see you next week on the recap and throughout the week on every other show that we have.